Asket's Explanations Part 6. Explanation from September 5, 1975, Jmmanuel, Switzerland. Then we still made several special small preparations before Asket took us into outer space again with her ship and then carried out the transmission into the past. Our landing place in the past, in the year 32, was the same place where we had taken off only minutes before, minutes which, however, now suddenly lay about 2,000 years in the past. I am still able to remember very well that the entire landscape of the past was only very slightly different from the way it was in the normal present time of the year 1953. Several ranges of hills and mountains were somewhat different, as were the immediate surroundings of the landing place. That which had been subject to fundamental alterations were villages and the little town of Jerusalem, as I was also able to determine in the later time, in the 1960s. But all in all, everything had otherwise remained about the same, at least as far as the landscape was concerned. After the landing in year 32 we immediately set out on the path to Jerusalem. With a 4-day march through the wild and sheer mountains, filthy and dusty, we finally arrived near the city, if I may so designate the then larger, walled village. In this 4-day march on foot we fed ourselves with food which Jitschi had prepared shortly before our departure into the past, in the year 1953. From somewhere, Asket had acquired an entire little sack of ancient coins which she made shiny again with some sort of radiation. These coins were intended to help us to support ourselves in the past. During the march on foot Asket explained yet very many things which could be helpful to us in the time of the year 32. They were all explanations which related to ways of behaving, and so forth, so we would not be conspicuous. And, because these explanations are not important, they were simply bypassed in the memory recording and were not written down. The explanations and communication of experiences were therefore only recorded again and written down where they are important. Still to explain is that Jitschi had also already received a language transformer from Asket with the first trip into the past because he also could not speak the various languages. Likewise Asket also naturally wore one of these small devices herself. Jitschi says, "Now where are we then?" Asket says, "Quite near Jerusalem, which you see down there. We are here on the Mount of Olives, and the huts there in the foreground are called the village of Bethphage. But now look there at the men who are coming along the path." Jitschi says, "Who are the people then?" Asket says, "A very wise earth human with his followers. I knew that he would come through here at this time, therefore I led you here first." Jitschi says, "You mean?" Asket says, "It is so." Jitschi says, "Incredible, which one of them is it?" Edward says, "I am, certainly, peculiarly moved, but I really do not find that incredible. I think I know which he is, the one there in the middle, the tall one who stands out over everybody." Asket says, "You observe very precisely, it is he." Jitschi says, "You with your damned power of observation and your Zoroastrianism. Indeed, absolutely nothing is able to bring you out of your goddamned calmness, eh? Lousy slave driver, you damned." Edward says, "Now get yourself obligingly together and just consider whom you will encounter in a few minutes. That should indeed be the greatest thing in your life. Therefore do not continually curse, otherwise I will paste you one." Jitschi says, "I totally believe you would. You no longer have any respect at all for your elders, eh? Now you actually believe that you are as big as a giant and a hero as well, eh? You actually think that your damned knowledge and realism has made you dear God in person, eh?" Edward says, "If you do not hold your trap now then I will punch you one. Behave yourself obligingly like a civilized human, even if you cannot cope with the situation. You certainly wanted to come with us, and now you cannot cope with the greatness of the hour. Can you not come to terms with events and adjust to the present reality? The truth is too hard for you, you cannot digest it and threaten to spin out. Therefore try to be quiet and control yourself, because you namely curse and blaspheme only because you are not equal to the situation and cannot cope with the truth. That simply requires its time, then you will manage it. But please stop cursing and blaspheming, because it is completely wrongly placed here and is completely useless. Jitschi says, I have listened, but I do not swallow your hogwash. You are a goddamned realist and nothing seems to shake you. But I am a human with feelings and thoughts and not such a soulless and thoughtless robot like you. Step out in front of the people and lie to them that you are God in person. You thrice cursed vile wretch, you megalomaniacal idiot, you low scoundrel and filth. You can just... Ouch! Without saying another word, I punched Jitschi in the middle of the nose with my clenched fist. Edward says, I am sorry, Jitschi, but is that enough now? Asket says, he is bleeding. Edward says, should I perhaps approve of his hysteria? Asket says, nobody said anything about that. You have certainly dealt with it correctly. I only said that he is bleeding. Edward says, nobody has ever been killed by a bit of a nosebleed. Asket says, but it is. Jitschi says, leave it, Asket. It is my own fault. He only did what he had to do. It was correct that way because I really spun out and the punch was good medicine. He brought me to my senses again. Everything is simply too much for me. I simply am not coping with it. Please excuse me and do not be angry with me. Edward says, nobody said anything about that either. Forget it. Asket says, you have a strange way of behaving correctly in such situations. Edward says, what must be, must be. But look now. There come the men. Whatever will they think when they see us? Asket says, such thoughts are not significant, because they are mostly only of an interrogative nature in regard to the who and where at do. But look. They are now sitting down at the edge of the path and only the one is coming here. Edward says, that is indeed Jmmanuel. What in the world should I say to him? Girl. Jmmanuel says, be greeted in peace. Asket says, your greeting applies also to you. Edward says, I join in that. Jmmanuel says, go to my brothers. They will tend to you. These words were directed at Jitschi, who, without a word of reply, went obediently to the men sitting at the edge of the path, who immediately attended to him. Jmmanuel says, you are Edward. Edward says, that I am. And this. Jmmanuel says, is Asket. I know. But I do not wish to talk with her, rather with you. You have struck very hard. Edward says, it. Jmmanuel says, my words are no reproach. You have behaved correctly. He required this pain,